Carl, I am thrilled to have you here. So you guys might not know this, but I got hooked up with Carl over at State Farm, and he'll tell you a little of the background. But I was moving back to Cleveland from San Francisco. I don't know if you know the story. I had a terrible relationship. I love my State Farm agent in California. When I moved here, they just assigned me somebody randomly, and they were so bad. I was going to go to another agency, and then corporate said, wait, let's try someone else. And then I got connected to you, and I have been thrilled ever since. And the motivation of having this call is I had a client of mine who had an estate. His mother passed away. There were 3 homes. And I have some high net worth clients with, high 6 and 7 figure homes. And it got me thinking, a lot of people that are watching my audience that I connect with, I don't know how much they think about protecting their assets. And I said, thrilled that you were able to make some time to talk to people and to talk about the importance or some ideas that maybe people don't think about regarding insurance.
Sure.
Quickly, just tell people a little bit about your background, your niche. How did you pick your niche? Why you got into the insurance space? Give them a little bit of a color of you. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for taking the time. So I've been your agent for a long time, but I got into insurance. It's the only thing I've ever done. So I've been in insurance for 18 years now, all with State Farm. I got into it just right out of college. It's not one of those things that you learn in high school or college. They don't tell you about insurance. They don't really tell you about credit. They don't tell you about taxes. They just, someone assumes you're going to know it. So, using that principle, I found that a lot of our clients, a lot of the high net worth clients, people think people who have a lot of money know a lot more than that. They feel like they went to a different school that taught them about insurance when they were in high school. And they taught them about credit in high school. And the reality is it just doesn't. Just because you're a doctor and you make a lot of money doesn't mean, you spend 10 years in medical school. Doesn't mean you spent, 5 years learning about insurance. And so I kind of end up finding that in the area. I'm in the Beachwood area, and a lot of our clients are pretty affluent. They've got lots of assets, and they really have to trust whoever they're kind of working with, because at the end of the day, no one sits down and reads 37 pages of a policy. If you could, you're probably an attorney, because most of it is not even understandable, even for a doctor or someone who knows a bunch of real estate. So it becomes about protection, and then it comes about who they're trusting. So I found that, most of them, as I sat down with them, they usually, the person giving them a policy, and I think I ran this into the agent that you were with, Joel, they were all about the price. They're like, Joel, I'm going to get you a great deal. And they basically end up pulling off coverages and cutting stuff up and making it not some great coverage. So it's like, wow, you were happy with the price, but lo and behold, you have a claim. You're going to turn around. It was probably going to be a very tough conversation to have. Him saying, or even me saying, sorry, I saved you $50 last year, but you get the $300,000 bill because we didn't cover this because, you figured you wouldn't want to. So the more that has happened to our clients over the years, the more we have found out that people who are affluent not only need, more coverage than people who aren't, because they have more to cover, but they need more unique coverages. Just some of the larger houses have things that smaller houses don't, and we end up having to kind of piece and part that together instead of just saying, here's your insurance. It's a one size fits all. Buy it on the internet, buy it from John, Susie, Aaron, doesn't matter. Well, that's not really the case. Not all programs are the same. And we've kind of found that niche in our area and in the office, to where we sit down with everybody individual and say, you might not need this, but you probably need these coverages that the average Joe might not need.
So in regards specifically to home ownership, obviously insurance covers a wide brush of different things, areas of emission, liability, all that stuff. But specifically regarding home ownership, what would you say are the top 3 or 4 mistakes that buyers make, or in regards to protecting their assets, their home? And yes, it applies. And is there a difference between somebody who has a $300,000 to $500,000 home versus an $8 to $1 million+ home? Are there different strategies around that? So what would you say, kind of high level, are the biggest mistakes people don't think about in regards to home ownership?
The reality is, and this is going to probably not be a very popular opinion for most people, but I always tell people, the biggest mistake you probably do is listen to your mortgage person about what your insurance coverage is to be. And I understand that it's got to fit in the mold. Your homeowner's got to be $100 a month to fit a debt to income ratio or something like that. It has to be $100 a month. I realize that's part of the problem in the industry as far as what you need. So sometimes someone will come in and say, well, my mortgage guy said this should only be, $50 a month. That's all they allotted for homeowner insurance. And well, unfortunately, you're letting somebody who is, who's probably looking out for your best interest on the mortgage side, but I'm probably going to be your guy, and my team will be your team for the next 30, 40 years. I would rather not have the recommendation of insuring your house come from somebody who needs to fit the little box. So we do usually have to work around that. Sometimes that brings up an extra meeting after they close on the house to make sure they're properly covered, because in 20 years, I don't want to have a claim. And I say, well, your mortgage guy said we should have cut off that $8 coverage, and now you're out $10,000. So it's probably one of the biggest errors, because they're trying to get it fixed at closing. As far as a large client, difference between a $300,000, $500,000, $1 million homes, a lot of it's the economies of scale. Large homes, I've never seemed to worry about burning down houses. You think of insurance, think of my house is going to burn down, I need to protect for that. Well, in Ohio, all homeowners policies cover for that. You can't even get a policy that will not cover for fire. So you can kind of rest assured that's in all the contracts. That's the world we live in. The reality is that it's the little coverages that people don't see that are more important. I've noticed a $1 million house usually has a finished basement. It just usually does. And usually it's not a $20,000 finished basement. It's a couple $100,000, because it's a big part of the house. So at that point, the coverage in your basement, which could be a very expensive coverage for a homeowner on your insurance, is a must need for someone who has $1 million, $800,000 house. And it may be a lesser need for someone who has an unfinished basement on a $300,000 house. So it's a very large charge in your insurance, and people are usually, not wanting that coverage. It might add 30, 40% to their premium, which is a large jump. But the reality is, in insurance, the more you're paying for that extra coverage, the more likely it's willing to happen. It's going to happen if the insurance companies already know it happens. So if you're paying $1 or $2 for a coverage, it's probably not likely to happen. It's just a fact. If you're paying $300 to $400 a year for a certain little coverage, it's probably more likely to happen in our area, right? And it does go by area. We are in Ohio, so we don't worry about earthquake as much. Forest fires are kind of not that big of a deal. Hurricanes don't get here. So it's those backup of sewer and drain coverages, that flooded basement that we get in Ohio is a massive coverage that people will just bypass because they're like, oh, I'll just clean it up myself. And they don't think about the $100,000 that's sitting in that basement.
Yeah, I was going to say the other mistake, forget somebody who's buying a house, somebody that's already been in their house, someone who's maybe in their either 30s and looking at upsizing, or in their 60s, 70s and looking at downsizing. Are there considerations that they should be considering that they oftentimes overlook, that you say, if only I would have known X, I should have done these things? And it might be a longer conversation that somebody should be reaching out to you to discuss. But you're right. I don't care about hurricane. And I'm thinking to myself, does my policy cover a sewer backup? Because in Ohio, there's sometimes heavy rains, and I have a lot of clients that say there's been water intrusion. But maybe if they had insurance, it could be expensive. But for somebody who already owns a home and isn't buying, what are some things that people should be considering or reviewing with their insurance agent?
Yeah. Yeah, and yes, you do have the covers. That's good news. The reality is they should be looking at, we're in a portion of this world where inflation is a big thing, and it's affecting insurance, because obviously if I build your house today and I built it 3 years ago, the cost is 100% different, right? I mean, not to get down the actual numbers and the sticks and stones, but a $200,000 house in pieces 3 years ago is probably close to $400,000 right now. I mean, just with labor costs, wood, shingles, concrete, there's nothing that didn't get touched. So it's making sure, okay, do I have enough coverage on the house? Because God forbid you do have a burn down, right? That's the total loss. I come home, someone left something on, a candle burned the whole house down, the Christmas tree caught fire, don't matter what it is, right? A candle was lit, and I've got to come up with $600,000 to rebuild this house, but I only had $400,000 of coverage because I was insured for the last 20 years with any company, including State Farm, and they didn't adjust no one doubled my coverage in the last 3 years. We've had increases to keep up with it, maybe 10, 20%. But we don't just double contracts because of inflation, because it happens so fast. We don't have time to catch it. I mean, the inflationary numbers this year on insurance have outpaced the insurance increases that we can catch by a long shot. So it's saying, hey, when you get your renewal, 200,000 on my house, 300,000, is that really enough? Well, I mean, I'm not an expert in building houses, but we can run a calculator really fast and you can find them online. You put in your zip code, your square footage, about your finishes, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, full basement, and it'll give you a pretty close ballpark to what you should be paying today to rebuild it. If that number come up 500,000 and you're only insured for 3, at that point, I feel like, that's a good conversation to call the insurance
That's a
company.
great point. I never actually, I'm happy that my home value is appreciated considerably, but I candidly did not look to see if I had enough coverage. And shameless plug for agents, if people are looking at figuring out what their house is worth, look, we do free home valuations, no obligation, no cost for clients all the time. Obviously, we're looking, seeing if somebody wants to sell, but whether you're using us or another agent, get a hold of your agent. They can run some comps and tell you what a ballpark range your house is worth. So that's a good double combo to have someone get an idea, make sure you're covered with your agent. That's huge. And then as far as if people wanted to ask you specific questions about their personal situations, what's the best way they can reach you?
Sure. So, I mean, it's very easy. You could call the office. I have an office in Beachwood. We're big on social media. I mean, we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a Google Plus page. You can look at Carl Vajdich State Farm in Beachwood. I have 9 team members in the office. So I have 9 agents that work with me. Everybody kind of specializes. I have a gentleman who does only commercial. I have a gentleman who does apartments, like if you were a renter. I have a couple ladies in the office that just handle homeowners. So they specialize a little bit because, like I said earlier, it's not a one size fits all thing. I'm not going to say, okay, Joel, you're having $1 million house. You're going to talk to the guy in my office that deals with renters who are moving in, down the street. It's a different conversation to have, and there's different needs and desires. So we kind of will get you to the person in the office who handles that. So it's not like, well, why are you giving me this coverage? I may never need it. And that, it's one of those, you'll need these coverages because in the last 3 years, all of our homeowners have had claims in these areas so that you're in the right spot. But that's probably the best way to get hold of us.
I'm going to put your contact information. I'm going to put all your contact information in the description below so people can reach out to you. And besides just property and casualty, I know you do life and health. You've given me lots of guidance on life insurance and helping along those lines. And maybe in another call, we could talk about the benefits of protecting assets on estate planning. I know that's an estate attorney world too, but you also help out with life insurance and making sure to give as much or as little as possible to the government as possible. So that might be a nice follow. Real quick at the end, last things are, before we get into my favorite rapid fire questions, a little bit about you. I'd love to see if there's any other big bullet points that people might have missed that you say, hey, listen, I wish I would have known this, or a lot of homeowners or people looking at buying either of those groups they own already or they're buying. Are there any other big bullet point mistakes that you give them fair warning about?
I'd say read. It's horrible to say this, but I have many clients who I tell them, read the policy. I know that you're not going to read 27 pages of a policy. Read the first page. It's called the declaration page. Do it. The reason why I say this is with claims, ignorance is never a good solution. You can't fight us back by saying, I just didn't know that, Carl. I have had you for 5 years. The policy clearly said the last 5 years this was not covered and I never read it, right? When I get into that, I get upset with myself, my team, like, why didn't we bring this up? And maybe we had. But the reality is, if you read the first page, it gives you enough about your policy that you can at least have an education on, okay, I am kind of covered here, I'm not covered there. And then reach out to your agent and say, hey, the weirdest thing is this says I'm only covered for this. That just seems weird to me. Do it before you have the claim. I have clients that call on the day of the claim, and I wish they would have called me the day before we have fixed the problem, because the day after, there's nothing we can do in insurance except for say, let's work on it together. And I guess, this is not going to be fun. So that's my big takeaway. Just don't read 27 pages of a policy. Read the first page. Something looks funny, call the agent, because that's what it was built for. It was supposed to be a summary of the next 27 pages.
Got it. That's huge. I'm guilty. All right, let's get into the rapid fire questions. This is fun. Just kind of get a little bit association. The first question I normally ask, we hit it. I mean, my viewers probably won't be that interested, but I'm curious. What's your favorite tool you use in your business?
It's a program called Racing Snail. It's called Racing Snail, and it's a program that I use with my team. It tracks all of our activities, compensations, commissions for years and years and years. And it'll track just activities. I can track phone calls into the office. So as a business owner, it's really nice to be able to see, you spent $500 here, you spent $1,000 there. Where is it going? Or, these people, how are my clients dealing with new business and existing business? So it's just this massive program that controls marketing, activities, team,
Cool.
client, and it's called Racing Snail. Don't know where they.
Fair enough. Biggest personal passion. What's your biggest personal passion?
Coaching my kids softball and baseball games.
What are things that you're personally looking into or researching right now?
I've been actually looking at a lot of cryptocurrencies. It's like all over the news.
Yeah,
So
I got into that space. We could talk offline on that. What books or podcasts or blogs that you follow that's been making the biggest impact on you recently?
A book called Infinite Banker. Great life insurance book. Recommend it to anyone.
Infinite Banker, awesome. And then if you can go back in time when you started your career in insurance, what would you tell your past self to do differently?
Probably it goes along with, I would probably say invest more money into my team when I was younger instead of trying to do it all myself.
Got it. And then if you can go back, I'm not going to ask how old you are, but if you can go back in time when you were 20 years old, what would you tell your 20-year-old self to do differently?
Save more money. I mean, That's probably a generic answer, but it's so true.
Carl, thank you for your time. Carl runs the State Farm office in Beachwood. His contact information will be in the show notes below. Great input over on the books. Great input on reading the abstract on the declaration page. Don't read all 27 pages. People make mistakes of not being insured enough and having a customized plan, whether it's a 300,000 home or a multiple 7-figure home. And make sure that you get your ducks in a row so there's no surprises. This is perfect. Thank you again. And always great doing business with you. Carl is my insurance agent. I highly recommend him. He is who I use for life insurance, property casualty, errors and admission for my own business. Reach out if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys soon.